This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
G'day everybody, thanks so much for joining me for another episode of the show, and I am very, very pleased to bring you a chat with the great Ken Mary, the percussive maestro from Alice Cooper and Fifth Angel. He's been in a heap of other bands and he's done so many sessions, it'd take me forever and a day. Maybe not that long, but it'd take me a while to list all of his accomplishments. Suffice to say, he is one of the greatest drummers in rock and metal history. Don't take my word for it. Have a listen to all of the things that Ken has done throughout the conversation. Now, the catalyst for this chat is due to the launch of a new album from Fifth Angel. It's another banger. It is titled When Angels Kill, and I have a tune from that album to share with you, but only if you are listening via the podcast apps. This one's called Resist the Tyrant, rather appropriate for 2023, I must say. You good people on YouTube, you know the drill. I can't play music, so we're going to dive into the chat right now. Either way, let's go.
The resistance has already started.
Here he is.
Why, hello.
Ken, how's things, mate?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
So far, so good. How about you? I can. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly. Yeah. Doing
Excellent.
well. Yeah, doing well. I've been looking forward to the possibility of this chat ever since I heard the Third Secret, I must say, mate. So it's a pleasure to finally meet you.
Oh, thank you so much.
How have you found the calls have been going this time around in support of the new album?
I think very good. I think, I think we're in kind of a little bit of a weird season where it seems like everybody and their brother released an album at the same time.
It's the COVID, aftermath of COVID. Yep.
I guess. I mean, it just seems like there's, a lot of releases out there. But, so far, I mean, all the calls have been going very, very well. And one thing that I was impressed about is, a lot of the interviewers are telling me, hey, this is my favorite Fifth Angel album, which is, to me, amazing because, you're fighting nostalgia on the older albums. Like it's hard to fight nostalgia. And usually when you're introduced to a band, you always like the first albums that you heard from that band that introduced you to it. For me, like whether it's Iron Maiden or Judas Priest, my favorite albums are always the older records. So to have some people, actually a fair number of people tell me that, I was just like, wow, that's very, I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah, true. And I'm glad they're paying attention. But I must say, I haven't lived with When Angels Kill for long enough yet to really make a thorough appraisal outside of the fact that I enjoy it. I think it's great. But I've got to say, I've got to go back in time a little bit. I still listen to The Third Secret. I think what you guys did there, and I mentioned this to John when I had a chat to him whenever it was released, 2017 or 18 now, 5 or 6 years ago, can you believe? But a lot of legacy acts come out of the woodwork and they release things and then they kind of go away. And I'm really grateful you guys haven't done that. You followed up. But the strength of The Third Secret, mate, I mean, it was one of the albums of the year 2018, wasn't it? It was one of the albums of 2018. So I just wanted to give you that feedback.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it was, I felt like we did a great record as well. But, no matter what you do, there's going to be some people that go, well, it wasn't Ted, singing or this or that. But yeah, we were surprised that the response was as positive as it was, because we were very nervous about Third Secret, to be honest with you. Like there was a lot of stress because we knew that the first two albums were considered classics and we didn't want to put something out that we didn't feel was as strong. So we did wait till we felt like we had something special. And then when we did put it out, I mean, it seemed like people were really into it. So yeah, I mean, I think that was great. And then hopefully they feel as strong as this. I mean, it's always our goal to make something that's going to stand the test of time, because here we are, 35 years later or whatever, talking about those other albums. And, we want to shoot for that in every record that we make.
Yeah, you raise an important point there. You guys don't feel like a legacy act. You feel like a new band. Okay, given the strength of The Third Secret and now what you're doing here with the new album, it feels like as though it's not a second coming. It's just here you are, and you've gone with Nuclear Blast, and they have all of the young hot things on there as well, on the label there as well. But you guys are matching it beat for beat, note for note with some of the deathcore bands, some of the metalcore bands. And I remember, now that I'm talking about it, I remember talking about this aspect of it of your music with John. So when you're thinking about touring and performing, are you thinking about, hey, let's look at some legacy packages, or are you actually thinking, hang on, we've got the chops to match it with the younger bands, we're going to go down this route?
Well, I think for us, we're really just trying to get the word out to as many people as we can. We're not really thinking in terms of what type of bands we want to play with. We're just looking for the best opportunities to share music with people. So, whatever that might be. I mean, I think for us, probably, honestly, I've done a lot of different festivals over the last, 5 years. And I do think that, you do want to be paired, I think, with music that everybody, somewhat similar style. I think we could certainly hang with the younger bands, no problem. But I do think, if we're paired with bands that are maybe a little more melodic, maybe a Halloween or a Hammerfall or, something in those areas, I think it's going to probably be better for us.
I'm probably asking a question revolving around my own music taste, so there's nothing for me to listen to, say, Carnifex and then switch you guys on. But I know a lot of listeners don't want that, and I know a lot of promoters don't necessarily think that way. I just think you are the one legacy band, and there's a lot out there, let's face it, that could actually do it if the opportunity presented itself, and that's my point around all of that.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew. That's really, it's very kind of you to say that. And, that's what we're always shooting for. We're always trying to be excellent no matter what it is, whether it's the artwork, whether it's a photo, whether it's a song, whatever it is, we're trying to do everything with absolute excellence. So, the fact that you're noticing that is very encouraging to us.
Yeah, cool. Yep. Now, when Angels Kill, what were the more significant challenges? Okay, so you came back, you did The Third Secret. I've already mentioned what a stunning album that one there is. But did you feel the sophomore response, the sophomore pressure, if you like? I know it's your fourth album, but you know what I mean? There's been such a gap between the 80s and now. Did you feel that pressure to deliver for people who really loved what you were doing with The Third Secret?
I don't know. I don't think we felt as much pressure on this one as we did on Third Secret. I think this one, we kind of felt like, we were very happy with what, and that's all you can really do as an artist, is make an album that you really feel passionate about yourself. And then I always say this in interviews, but, then hopefully you find, 7-8 million people that agree with you or something, But as far as, that pressure, we just wanted to make ourselves happy. And we really did. I mean, I think we all feel very strongly about the record, and we feel very happy with, what was produced. So, so I think for us, we that was what we followed. We tried to do something that we loved. And so I would say, I don't think we felt the pressure. I mean, obviously you want to make something amazing that stands the test of time, that your fans will love. But in this instance, it was kind of cool that we did a concept record and we wove together all of the previous records, all the themes, and even some of the lyrics and song titles we wove into this album. There's all kinds of Easter eggs for fans like you, that loved the earlier albums. You're going to find all kinds of little Easter eggs in this album, and I think you're going to really love it. And then the songs, I think the songs are killer. The one thing that we haven't given up on any of the records is we always try to make songs that people can sing along with. And when we played the Kit Festival in Germany, it was awesome. We, thousands and thousands of people are singing the words, the choruses of every song, even the new ones. And, that just shows us, for us, we're on the right track. I mean, for what Fifth Angel is, that's exactly what we need to be.
Yeah. You brought up the concept there, and I couldn't help but feel as though, and I could be well off the track here, so correct me, but, we're living in an era of this extreme left-wing totalitarianism, this idea that we have narrative as opposed to fact. And I feel like as though you're addressing some of those things through the concept in the album. Is that the case?
Well, it certainly wasn't the intention. I mean, originally when we were starting to create this album, we were thinking that we're telling a story that's way in the future. It's going to be, years and years and, maybe 50 years or 100 years. But then you did see some very aggressive governmental tactics during COVID that really did kind of give us, I guess a chance to pause and go, what's going on here? So oddly enough, it's kind of weird, but the album actually almost seems like something that now is relative to today almost.
Big time.
You talk about totalitarianism, and you talk about government overreach, and you talk about, we really did see the birth of think about this. I mean, I don't like to say this because, I'm not talking about politics. I don't care what side you're on, right, left. We've never seen something in human history before. And this was something where we saw all the governments of the world do exactly the same thing at exactly the time. Everybody's locked down. Everybody's doing this. We're all doing this. Everybody's getting vaxxed. Everybody's, all of the different things that they implemented. The entire world did it. And so I kind of look at that and go, is that the birth of a global government? I mean, I don't know. Is it? I mean, it certainly looks like it. I mean, so after that happened, we were in the middle of writing this, and I was like, wow, I didn't realize we were writing such an applicable record, to be honest with you. We had no idea until, once COVID hit, we were like, wow, this is very, very applicable to today.
Yeah, I was listening, as I say, I've listened to the album a little bit, maybe a dozen times or so, but I was really focusing on the lyrics on a couple of those listens, and I was like, Jesus, you guys you're either soothsayers, you've got a crystal ball there somewhere and you've written it before COVID or you've written it through COVID and you've decided to weave it through this really interesting narrative you got. And I actually think for other bands, that's the right way to address a lot of these topics, because everybody knows you got the political bands, the Rage Against the Machines and stuff, who come out there and except they're not saying, don't do what you tell me or whatever they fucking sing. They're saying, do what the government tells you. That's literally what Tom Morello and those guys are saying now, which is just bizarre. But I think a way through is... Yeah, you go.
I thought that was the weirdest thing in the world. Like, well, first of all, we never have gotten political. I mean, if you look at back, and you look at the story that was woven on this record, it was really pulled from things that we were talking about, like when we were teenagers. And if you go back and you listen to Third Secret was the first album we actually started thinking about. Maybe we'll create a concept record, and we were talking about doing it on Third Secret, because we noticed that a lot of the themes that we talked about on the first two albums, things like deception in media and terrorism and betrayal and war and all these different things that we were talking about, excuse me, were still, 100% completely applicable. So, I don't know if I'd want to say like we're soothsayers or anything, but it's just weird that the things we were talking about, 35 years ago are still very applicable today. I mean, I guess it's a sad state of affairs of mankind that, all of these things we talked about are still problems now. And so I guess in that sense, I mean, we don't have a crystal ball or anything, but I guess if you think of worst case scenario, wow, this is weird. I'm getting a low battery message. Are you there still?
Yeah, gotcha. I can see and hear you. Yep, no worries.
If this fails, I'm at my studio right now. I can go home and plug in and continue from there if that's possible. But it's a ways away, so I don't know what you're.
Oh, but yeah, no, it's.
This dies. I will be able to click that link and get back with you in probably 35, 40 minutes. So if that works, I'll do that. So did that answer that question?
Yeah, it does. It's just we're living such a strange period in history. I get that there's always been a tendency for totalitarianism for people in leadership positions. They become democratically elected, but then they entrench themselves in power and they surround themselves with unelected officials that become their foot soldiers. And some of that's definitely through your lyrics on the new album. I can hear that, but it's the it's the lemmings though, isn't it? The lemmings, the people who go along with this stuff.
Well, this is what I think. I mean, I think that for the first time in history, we're kind of seeing that there's, like in the United States, we're supposed to have two parties. We don't. It's like there's one party, and and if you're a citizen and you're not in the government, you're not part of the party. It's like we're going to hold a party, but you're not invited. So, I mean, I'm not anti-government per se, but, I've always had a certain suspicion, of the government. And so have bands like Pink Floyd, the Wall, which ironically is a very leftist record. They were, very suspicious of the government and concerned about what the government is doing. And, it's ironic to me that, you have some bands that now all of a sudden it's okay, like. It just seems bizarre. Music has always been an outlet where people were able to express themselves artistically. And I do feel like that's stifled a great deal. I mean, I will say this, we never get political. We're not a political band. This is a story. We're talking about good and evil and all those concepts that we just talked about, terrorism and war and betrayal and love and, things going wrong and natural disasters. I mean, those are the kind of things, nuclear war. I mean, we've always talked about this kind of stuff. So it's not anything new, but Certainly, I think if you have your eyes open, you should be questioning things. You should be looking at what's going on around you and asking questions, and not just taking everything as gospel and like, your best interests are always going to be held at heart. Because, I honestly am not really seeing that.
No, it's a very odd era in that the most subversive thing that you can be publicly is Christian conservative and still living within a nuclear family. That's subversive in 2023. It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
It was only 10 years ago when that was considered the norm.
Yeah, it is odd. I mean, it's a very odd thing that, that's a threat to somebody too. I mean, I'm always of the mindset, you live and you let other people live. And there definitely seems to be some, there's a faction of people out there that, in my mind, they've lost their bearings. They don't even know what they want at this point. But yeah, when you talk about freedom versus totalitarianism, I think we can all, almost all of us agree that, hey, freedom is better. It's better to be free. I certainly hope we can all agree on that. If we can't, then we're going to have real problems.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to enter into, is your federal election, is it this year or is it next year? But either way, that's when silly season really kicks in.
Yeah, it's 2024. And, I don't have any faith in any of that anymore. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. And I'm not saying I'm older and cynical, but, when you're young, you have a certain belief in the system. You have a certain belief in the system and that it's working well for everybody and everything. It's like, I don't have that. I'm not saying it's all wrong, but there's definitely things that are wrong.
Yeah, great. Yeah. It is the musicians, though, that are helping us through this period here. And you've been doing it as long as anybody. I mean, your roll call, your session workers, I'm disappointed, not when I say this, take it with a grain of salt. I'm disappointed in your behalf. You're not more of a household name in the metal community, to be frank, because you've worked with so many great musicians, and I can actually tell your drumming at this point because I've gone back and I've listened to a lot of your stuff after I listened to The Third Secret. So at this point, you could do almost anything, I think, and you're in your studio there. So what's the motivating factor behind keeping this rig on the road, this beast that is Fifth Angel?
Well, to be honest with you, yeah, the only reason to do it at this point is for the artistic integrity of the music. I mean, that's the only reason I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I love music. I enjoy music. I appreciate the fans that have supported me over all these years and supported the bands that I've worked with. And, I feel like if you're an artist, you make art. And so that's what we're doing. And in a very difficult environment in terms of musically, let's face it, streaming has killed royalties. It's very difficult to make a living as a musician these days. That's why you have everybody in like 10 different bands, trying to make a living. And, at this point, the main reason for me to do it is just the artistic integrity and the enjoyment of making music and making music that inspires me and hopefully inspires other people.
You may have told this story elsewhere, but I haven't heard it. How did you hook up with Alice way back in the day?
Actually, I have talked about this story a little bit. I was touring in Los Angeles playing a very famous venue called the Whiskey A Go-Go with an artist named Randy Hansen who does a Hendrix impersonation. And by the way, he's still out there touring today, touring Europe. I mean, doing probably better now than he has in years and years. But I was playing the Whiskey A Go-Go, and some people that were working with Alice's management company came out to the show and they saw me play and they said, hey, would you like to audition for Alice Cooper? And I was like, yeah, of course I would. And I was a kid at the time, and I lived in Seattle, and so I was like, well, are you guys going to fly me down? And they're like, well, no, we're not flying anybody down, but if you want to have an audition slot. And they auditioned people for like 3 days, and I don't know how many, a lot of players went down there. And so, I threw my dime. I spent $300 on a flight, or maybe it was $350 at the time, which is a lot when you're young and, you don't really have the money. I didn't really have the money back then, but I threw my dime, took my chance, and went down and auditioned. And, the next thing I knew, I was playing, Joe Louis Arena, sold out 2 nights, 22,000 people, broadcast live on MTV in front of 20 million more. And, I was a pig in slop. I mean, I was, having the time of my life. So, that's how it happened. And it was quick, I mean, I went from, playing the biggest place I played was like 3,000 seats to all of a sudden I was playing coliseums and what a great time, what a great era to play in, and what a great time that was for us.
Did you work with Kip on that album? Is that correct? Kip Winger?
Yeah. On Raise Your Fist and Yell. Yeah, that was Kip playing bass. That was Kane Roberts on guitar. Who ironically, Kane Roberts is a graphics artist, and he did some AI imagery for us for our second video, Resist the Tyrant. And the AI imagery in there was actually created by Kane Roberts. So I think that's kind of a funny tie-in to your question. But yeah, that was Kip, Kane, Paul Taylor, myself, and Alice Cooper, of course.
What happened because that's a hell of a rhythm section. What happened with Trash then? Did you just wanted to go in a different direction?
Well, I actually, people ask me like, well, why did you, leave the Alice Cooper camp? And, if you look back, they had a couple people within their organization, to be honest with you, that were maybe not the right people to have in the organization, that made you feel like, hey, don't think of this as home. Don't think of this as something, this is a gig. And, that's it. And, if you want to do something, you're going to have to do it on your own kind of mentality. And so, I joined House of Lords, which was on RCA, and Gene Simmons from Kiss was involved in executive producing that. And so that's basically what I went to do. And Trash came out after that. And, the album did really well. Ironically, the tours that we had done were much, much bigger than the tour that went on for Trash. So,
really?
It's just a weird thing. You never know what's going on in the music business. But, those tours that we did with Alice, those were his huge comeback tours, and they were monster tours. And still to this day, I think maybe the second biggest tours of Alice's career, aside from the original band in like the 70s, like 72, 73. I think they were playing like Los Angeles Coliseum and crazy stuff like that. But aside from that, I think they were massive tours and a lot of fun to be on. I have very fond memories of that, with the exception of a couple of people within the organization that ironically are gone. And since those people have been gone, they've been able to keep a consistent band for quite a number of years now. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in. It's not Alice and it's not Shep. They were always great. And if I wasn't so young, I might have maybe asked Shep, hey, is this really the case? As far as, what I'm being told. But, when you're young, you think everybody in the organization knows what they're talking about, and you just assume that they're correct. So, but anyway, that's that story.
That's so true about youth, isn't it? You get fed a bunch of bullshit by assholes that are trying to make themselves more integral to an organization when really they're not adding any value whatsoever.
Well, I think in a sense they degraded the value. Like I think they tried to make the band feel more like they weren't important, when in actuality in that era the band was extremely important. And I think that the energy and aggression that we brought to the table, I think, definitely was a shot in the arm, for that, for Alice and for the organization. I think it was important that what was put together was the right thing at the right time. And I think we were definitely the right thing at the right time.
Did you have anything to do with Hey Stupid and The Last Temptation?
I did not. No, I was out of the band at that point. And also I'm pulling up my Zoom just to see if it's actually working on my other phones, because this looks like mine's going to die in just a minute. Sure. So if that happens, I'm going to try and connect here. And if that doesn't work, I'll go home and plug in and connect. But if I lose you, give me like a minute and I should be able to click back in.
Sure thing. No worries. Yeah. Are you on the East Coast or the West Coast? Oh, you're in Seattle, you were mentioning.
Well, I'm actually in Phoenix. Fifth Angel from Seattle. We're all, we all grew up in Seattle, and we were a Seattle band. And we came up in the same era that Queensryche and Metal Church and Heir Apparent and Q5. I'm trying to think of who else was kicking around. that is, TKO was there too. I played in TKO for a little while. So yeah, it was a very good metal scene up in Seattle back in the day. That's before all the grunge stuff hit.
Chris DeGarmo is one of the finest guitarists of any era. Did you know him?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I remember when they were just finished recording their EP, and they were talking about. I think I saw it was Chris DeGarmo. I'm not sure who the other band member was, but I saw them at Lake Sammamish in Washington State. And they were talking about how they had just finished this EP and they put in their own money and, they were excited about it, but they felt like, hey, we're taking a chance. We're using our own money. And Chris said, well, it's just money, and I thought that was a great attitude. And sure enough, that EP came out. And next thing I knew, I was hearing it on KISW in Seattle, and they're playing Queen of the Reich, and I thought it was like a new Judas Priest album or something. Like I was like, "Who the heck is this? This is incredible!" And it was Queensryche.
Yeah. I haven't listened to them since. When I say I enjoy all the stuff with Chris on it, Michael's another great guitarist as well, but it just doesn't have the same vibe for my taste. But you also with the grunge thing. I mean, you're not that old. Let's face it. So a lot of these guys like Chris Cornell, they're your age.
Yeah, I could have absolutely gone into the grunge thing. I thought it was, to be honest with you, I didn't like a lot of the attitude. Like even the grunge bands were making fun of other bands, and I thought that was, there's footage of Alice in Chains, making fun of Megadeth and stuff, and I look at that and I go, that was not cool because. The bands they were making fun of, like Kiss and Aerosmith and Ozzy, Ozzy, they wouldn't allow to join the tour, the grunge tour or whatever.
Yeah.
And, said, I'm going to do my own. I'm going to do Ozfest. And Ozfest was hugely successful. So, they thought they were too cool for school, and it didn't last very long, the whole grunge era. So, I mean, I think there's some great songs and some great bands. But, if you look at what it kind of wiped out, there was no reason for that to happen. I mean, I don't think the bands or the fans had to have that kind of an attitude. And it was just an unfortunate time in history. And it really did hurt bands like Fifth Angel and even bands like, I think it hurt Metallica. I mean, if you look at the 90s for bands like Megadeth, Metallica, Aerosmith, I mean, those were rough times for all of the, what you would consider, I don't know, maybe classic rock or whatever, but it was a difficult time for a lot of bands.
Yeah, I know for you guys, I mean, I was too young back then to be into it, but looking back, was it the grunge thing that really put a stop to you guys with the third album coming out in 1990 or 91?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it, had there been some interest, I mean, the difference, and I've talked about this in other interviews, but the difference was, now if you lost your record deal, you could still put out videos on YouTube. You could put out songs on Spotify. You can do pretty much, anything. You can still keep in contact with your fans. But back then, if you didn't have a record deal, you couldn't get records in the stores. You couldn't get anything on radio. There was no way for anybody to actually hear what you were doing. You were essentially silenced. And we did lose our deal. And once we lost our deal, that made it very difficult to continue in any way.
I couldn't understand the attitude either. Even as a young fella, Kurt Cobain was one of the biggest junkies around in the music industry at the time, yet he was heaping shit on bloody Motley Crue for doing the same thing. And since then, how many of those guys have died through drug overdoses? Lane Staley, he had a chronic issue, Scott Weiland too. I'm not heaping shit on these people. I'm simply saying their attitude was not well-founded and it was ill-directed. And forgive me for saying this, there's a bit of karma there, I think, in that most of these glam guys, they're still around, with the exception of maybe Jani Lane and maybe one or two others. Most of them are still around, still putting out great music. Look at Kip.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole thing. I think, well, I wouldn't call it karma per se, but I just think that, they lived a very hard lifestyle, the grunge guys, and a lot of them were doing serious drugs. And, that's what happens. If you're going to do drugs, you're going to either clean up or you're going to die. I mean, those are your two choices, and a lot of them died. And that era lasted, 2, maybe 3 years, and then it was pretty much gone. And so it's unfortunate what happened to other music in that era. But it is what happened, and it was unfortunate for a lot of a huge number of bands. I mean, even bands like Judas Priest. I mean, if you look at Rob Halford, went and did Fight for a while, and like everybody was trying to find something to do, and it was a bad time for probably about I'm going to say like a good 6-7 years. So, and there's still some backlash from some areas, but like for a band like Fifth Angel, Europe has always been a strong supporter. They didn't really get that far into the whole grunge scene, and so there are pockets of support certainly, and that's really what matters now is hey, who loves your music and who's going to support you.
I can tell you from firsthand experience talking to the musicians that Germany, Central and Eastern Europe, it's like the grunge thing didn't happen. They loved Fifth Angel and the bands from that era all the way through. They were just waiting for you guys to come back, or so it seems.
Well, we would have known. I think maybe we could have continued, maybe putting out product or something. We really didn't even know till around 2010 when we played the Kit Festival. And I'll give a shout out to Oliver here because he's kind of responsible, in a sense, for Fifth Angel reforming. But once we played that festival and saw the response, that was our first inkling that, hey, maybe there still is a market for this band, and maybe there's still a desire on people's part to hear this music still. So, yeah, and that was already, but it took us a long time to get from there to the Third Secret because we were so, we wanted to do music that sounded like Fifth Angel. And when we were starting to write, it was good music, but it didn't sound anything like Fifth Angel. And that was a real problem initially. And it took us some years to get that figured out.
Do you and John do the majority of the writing?
On this album, the majority of the writing was myself, Ed, Steve Conley, John, I'd say, and Ethan actually co-wrote a couple songs. So there was actually maybe more of us involved this time than perhaps the last time. Last time was largely myself, Kendall, and John on the last one. And this one definitely is a little more expansive, and I think it helped. I think it made a better record. I like myself, I enjoy this record. I love Third Secret. I think Third Secret's a brilliant album. Love it. But I do like this one a little bit more. It's like to me, there's more depth and there's maybe a little more variety. And I feel like the songs are stronger. I feel like we made some stronger songs. I do think that the additional writing, bringing, some more people into the mix, in my opinion, I think it really helped.
Just talking about your session work again, what's the biggest opportunity that I'm sure there's been a few, but what do you think the biggest opportunities you've thought, no, I won't do that, I'll pass on that? What would that be? The
biggest opportunity did you say that I passed on?
Yeah, because I assume you had a lot of managers calling you even recently asking if you can do some gigs.
Yeah, I don't. Well, that's a funny question because at one point I was playing on so many records. This is back in an era before Pro Tools when you couldn't fix the drums. I would get calls from all kinds of producers back then because I could play to a click, I could play with feel, I could play behind the click, I could play ahead of the click, and a lot of drummers couldn't do that, or if they played to a click, they didn't play with feel, and you couldn't fix the drums back then. So I don't really think I passed up on much. I mean, I tried to play on as many records as I could. Obviously, if I was going on tour, I couldn't. But as far as things that I passed up that I wished I would have done, I really don't have. There's nothing I can think of off the top of my head that was something I wished I would have done that I passed on.
I had a good chat to Michael Beinhorn, sorry, I think his name is, about this, but he did that whole album, Courtney Love, her band, and I think he brought in Dean Castronovo to do the drums on that album, and then it just got out, but I think the original plan, I could be wrong, was to just have Dean come in and do the drums and say it was this other chick who did it. You strike me as the guy who you hear these rumors, right? I mean, what's his name? The Toto guitarist, Steve Lukather has talked about it, but you strike me as the guy that probably did some work on a Green Day album or something like that, totally uncredited. Has that ever happened?
Well, I have ghosted on a couple things, but I can't really talk.
I knew you'd be one of those guys. I knew it.
Well, back in the day, I will say this: before Pro Tools, because I did, I really trained myself with click tracks and being able to manipulate around the click and retain feel and play with different feels on the click. I did play on a lot of things, but now with Pro Tools, if you have a player that's a fairly good player, you can edit and you can make them sound however you want to make them sound. You can make them play behind the beat, on the beat, whatever. But yeah, there was more of a demand for me before Pro Tools.
Yeah, I just knew it. Without knowing for a fact, I just knew you'd be one of those guys where producers call you in at sort of 2 minutes to midnight and say, "It's not working, Ken, fix it."
Well, thank you.
Can you give us a hint? Were they, without naming any names, were they really prominent artists, like top 40 artists, some of them?
No, I mean, I don't think there's nothing like what you're talking about, like Green Day or something like that. But, when you do that, you have to be honoring to the fact that you were, hired to do the job and you were hired to ghost, and, you must remain a ghost.
I know. And I hear the stories off the record, believe me. And I know I'm sworn to secrecy too. But there's a lot of it that it still goes on, I think, because you mentioned something in there. I'm a muso too, obviously. Feel. If you don't have feel, you lose the groove. And I've played with a lot of people who I hear the notes, but I can't feel a goddamn thing when I'm playing on stage next to them, and it's an awful gig. And I know producers in the know, like Michael, who excuse my language, does not fuck around, just wants someone to do the job. We're a bit like that too,
That's why Andy Johns used to fire drummers all the time, famous guys. I think he fired Kazi Powell at one point, and it's like, and I know, people thought he was insane. They're like, well, why are you firing these drummers? But I know what he was looking for. He engineered Bonham, and Bonham for his time was he was a very solid drummer for that era. That's before click tracks and everything. And Andy Johns would sit at the board and he'd do this thing with his wrist. He'd go,
yes.
He wanted to hear that snare just a little bit behind the beat, and I was able to do that. So he loved me, just because I had, I was trained and I knew how to do that. But if I wasn't able to do that, he would have fired me too. So yeah, I mean, I think the thing to do as a drummer or as a session musician is you always want to have as many skills in your bag of tricks as possible and be really good at what you do. And if you do, at least in that era, people would call you and have you play on things. I mean, I think that, the difference now is with technology, it's just like singers and auto-tune. You can have a singer that maybe isn't a great singer. You can have a guy that, I've worked with some artists where, the singer had great tone, had great emotion, but his pitch was not good, but I can fix pitch. And, the guy comes out sounding like, one of the greatest singers in the world, because he's deficient exactly where I can fix him. So, being a producer has definitely, you learn that, in today's day and age, the most important thing is songwriting and then emotion. If you're a singer and you have the feel and the emotion, that's something you cannot fix in Pro Tools, and drumming, I think the parts and the energy, that's something too that you really can't fix in Pro Tools. The actual cutting of the track, and if the track has good, we used to say that on Third Secret. The track has life in it. Like we'd finish a song and we go, "This track is alive." And that's the whole thing. If you can make tracks that are alive, then you won the game.
I agree with everything you've said. Yeah, nowhere near I've done nowhere near the session work you've done, but I've done a bit of it. And you can feel it. You can feel the energy draining out of your body when you're trying to keep up with the drum loop or particularly, I've got to say, guitarists. Guitarists are shocking for rhythm. Bass players probably are too, but given I'm a bassist, I don't do guitar gigs. Well, I do occasionally, but not often. But I've just found that with guitarists, there's a lot of, in Australia, AC/DC, as you can probably appreciate, are just worshipped. But the problem with AC/DC is you probably understand this. They play in front of the beat. Now, that doesn't work. It's just a fraction, but it's dun, 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 that thing that they do. and that suspended chord thing that they've got going on, and that's all, jagged sort of Malcolm Young shit. And I can't stand them, to be quite frank with you. And the reason I can't stand them is because the amount of guitarists that turn up and have that style. But it just gives me a headache.
I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, growing up, I loved those guys. AC/DC was awesome, and I still love. I mean, some of those classic albums. Back in Black. I mean, what a record! I mean, still today. I mean, just every song's amazing. It's almost like that first Van Halen album. I mean, for me, I'm sorry to hear you don't like AC/DC, but I understand. I mean, that's why there's different bands that do different things and have different sounds, and you can't like everybody. But I really did dig AC/DC. So anyway, yeah. I understand.
Well, it's interesting. Sometimes I'll play a gig and there'll be a hoary old rock goat in the crowd, and he'll come up and say, "Oh, it's pretty good," and then we'll get talking over a bevy or two, and you go, "Oh yeah, I used to, before AC/DC made it big time, and they had Mark Evans singing, or one of the bloke with the Evans surname singing, I think, not Mark, but the other guy, Dave Evans, that's it. Oh yeah, I did sound for them back in the day in Sydney, this sort of thing." And I'd say, "What were they like?" And he says, "Oh, you didn't know they were going to be big, so I didn't even remember what they sounded like. I just remembered doing it," this sort of thing. So yeah, there's definitely a bit of a Kevin Bacon thing going on. Is it 5 degrees of separation or something like that with AC/DC and the Australian music scene? So, but yeah, look, I'll make this my last question for you, okay? Because I'm just mindful of your time. If you had any advice and you're going to charge money for it, what would it be?
Wow, that's really a great question. If I lose this, I'll click in on my phone and we'll talk. I think advice for what? Somebody that wants to be in the music industry?
Look, you're a pretty experienced guy, I think, in all facets. So you choose. But I think music industry, as an aspect of answering that question, would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're trying to succeed, I mean, I think that you have to kind of shut off your logical brain, because if you're logical, you're going to look at the music industry and go like, what? There's like 50 million bands. There's no money in it. Like, what's the point of even doing it? Like if that's your logical brain. So you have to decide, I think you have to listen to, I do think you have to listen to your heart and look at it and go, is this something I can live without or I can't live without? For me personally, music has been such an enormous part of my life, almost my entire life, that I really can't imagine doing anything else. Like even if it's, like what I'm doing now, I'm doing mostly for enjoyment, and for the fans that appreciate what we do. I'm doing it for them too, but mostly for myself in terms of, I love music, I love producing, I love writing, I love recording, I love drumming, I love singing, I love playing keys, I love all of these things, I love every bit of it. So if you feel like you can do something else, and it's not going to bother you, I would probably recommend that. Like if you don't love music, probably don't get into it, because it's a really rough and tumble, just like AC/DC said, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. It's like it's a rough business with a lot of potholes and a lot of not cool people. And so if you love it though, and you have to do it, it's like breathing to you, then follow that and do the best you can and make something that you're excited about. Like sometimes I produce bands and I'll be working with somebody, they go, "Well, we don't really like this song." And I'm like, whoa, time out. What? You don't like the song, but we're putting it on a record? Like, if you don't like it, why would anybody else like it? Like, if you're the artist and you don't like the song, don't put it on your record. You should love every song that's on your record. And I think if everybody did that and they made a rule of that, I think the industry would probably be a lot better off. I think you'd have better albums, because I think people do put on songs that they don't really care for. And I think that's just, kind of a waste.
Yeah,
so that would be my advice.
Yeah. Great.
You can do something else. Here's my money advice. If you can do something else and love that, go do it. Music is not the, it's not the the pot of gold that it used to be, back in the day. So you have to really love it. If you really love it, then you know what? Give it a shot. Make it happen.
Did you come from a supportive environment? In other words, were your parents supportive of what you're doing, or were they saying to you, listen, Ken, maybe you should go to uni and become an engineer instead?
Well, I was raised by a single mom. I think later on I had a stepdad when I was just about entering my teens, and my mother was extremely supportive. I could tell you we grew up poor. She came from Lithuania. She couldn't speak English when she got here. I'm the first generation that was born in this country, and we did grow up very poor. And I remember when I was young and I wanted to play drums, my mom saved up $150 and bought me a red sparkle drum kit. And, for our family, that was a lot of money to spend on that. And that was after I had been playing snare drum alone, like just on a pad and drumsticks. I was just using a practice pad and drumsticks for about a year and a half. And when she saw that this is something I really wanted to do, she went ahead and got that. It wasn't a very good drum kit, but it was a drum kit, and I learned how to play on that drum kit. And, my mom was the most supportive ever because, she was not able to follow her dream of being an artist a lot. In her lifetime, she had to worry about raising kids on her own. My dad left when I was 5. And so there was a lot of pressure on her, and she did not have the ability to follow her dreams. And she wanted to make sure that we were able to follow our dreams. So yeah, she was very supportive, and that definitely helped. My stepdad, probably not as much. I mean, he wasn't really against it. I mean, he certainly, he was an avid hunter and fisherman, and, he always wanted to take me hunting and fishing, and I wanted to, jam with my buddies. So he didn't understand that at all, but, he didn't try to stop me either. So, I would say, yeah, it was a fairly supportive environment, and I had some success fairly young, decent. I would say, back in those days, you could play, my Fifth Angel was my high school band, and we used to play. I mean, we had a truck, we had a crew, we had a PA, we had a lighting system, we had all this stuff that we were able to buy just from playing gigs. So, it was a different era, but, I feel like even then, we had a certain level of success happening. And so I think that support, definitely grew over time just because, for my mother, she could see things happening, she could see things going in the right direction. And I think that but her support never was, it never waned. I mean, she was always super supportive.
Great. Sounds like a lovely lady. Yeah.
She was awesome. I mean, to be honest with you, yeah, my mother, I thank for everything. I mean, she really was, just phenomenal. And she did that not just with me, but she did that with my sisters as well. One of my sisters wanted to take ballet lessons. She found the money to get them to take ballet lessons. We never wanted for anything, even though we were, again, we were not in good shape financially. We were later on. Later on, we definitely were in much better shape. But when we were growing up, it was kind of tough. And my mother always found the money for us to explore our talents and dreams. And that's something I will never forget.
No, awesome. Yeah. Actually, I'll make this my final question for you. A bloke like you, mate, you've got to write a book. When's the autobiography coming out?
Well, Andrew, how many people do you think would really be interested in that? Just do you think like, what do you think? How many people would be getting my book?
Well, I write books. Okay. So I've ghostwritten books and stuff. And, look, in my experience with it, it all depends on the marketing that's behind it. But I think you've all answered the question in some ways already, which is that don't do it unless you really want to do it, unless it's something that you really feel comfortable doing. Because, there's not a massive payoff at the end of it because people want these bloody awful Instagram reels and stuff and 30-second bites or someone falling off a scooter or something at the end of it. But look, I think, what I think it is, though? I think it's an important artifact. I think it's not about a summary of your career. It's just the story to this day, to this time. And there just aren't enough of them out there. And look, Ken, you have such a wonderful story to share with people. And yeah, it might only sell a few hundred or 1,000 copies, 1,000 copies or whatever, but I don't actually believe that's the point. I believe that it's an artifact of your career to this date, and it's a bit like your music. It's always there.
Yeah, I've thought about it, and the nice thing about it now is it's almost like music. If you're a musician, you can get Pro Tools, make your own record, whatever, and almost anybody can have a record now. You can put it out on, videos out on YouTube. You can put things on Instagram. It's kind of cool. I mean, in that regard, and writing a book is the same way now. I mean, it's very, there's not a lot of barriers to writing a book and actually marketing a book. So, if I have time, between, coming up in the future, I think that's a nice idea. I would like to. I mean, I really would. I would love to write a book. It would just be a function of time. If I have the time to write a book, I would love to do it. And I guess, maybe it's discipline. Maybe it's just writing, a page or two every day. Maybe that's the thing. A friend of mine told me that. He goes, you know what? You need to write a book. I've had 3 or 4 people tell me that. And I was like, well, maybe I'll have to do that and just take a little bit of the morning and just write, a page or two every day or something, then, in a year you'd have a, 360 page book.
Yeah. You pick, my advice would be to pick the moments in your life that you want to share, write about them first. Don't worry about chronology, because you can always organize that later. You can always do a bit of a skeleton diagram from top to bottom if you like, but just write about the most important things. And before you know it, mate, you find you've got sort of 20, 30,000 words. And then the rest of the story sort of combines to give you 50. You really want at least 50,000 words for it to be something substantial for you. Nothing like, my first book was almost
how many pages roughly is 50,000 words?
Oh, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, to be honest with you, because I work in Word. Hang on, since you've asked the question, let me go and get my book. Hang on. Where is it? Yeah, my first one was a bit too big, but I just did it anyway. 400. So that was almost 100,000 words, that one.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a lot to share, so I just thought I'd do it. And I had the time, to your point. I don't have the time now, which is why I'm struggling to do the follow-up, which I promised people. But, to your point, I mean, you got Draft to Digital, which is a self-publishing platform. It goes out to Amazon, which if you're on Amazon, you're in the game, as you know, like being on YouTube. And I just paid a copy editor to go through it to make sure my grammar was correct. $2,000 or something like that. I mean, all things considered, it's a labor of love. So you just go, okay, that's how much it costs.
It is. It's a labor of love. Well, honestly, this Fifth Angel album was a labor of love. Like our budget compared to what we produced, it's not the same thing. We did a double vinyl album. We weren't expecting to do that.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened that way. And so, yeah, sometimes it is a labor of love, but like you said, it's something that's left there forever. Somebody can appreciate the art, forever until the asteroid hits it, at least.
or until we're all locked up and, the man in your grand overlord there and through your narrative in your album there starts controlling
until AI kills us all, I guess. Until AI does away with all of us.
Yeah. But how I think of it, honest, because I've got kids, is my grandkids are going to, if they have kids, obviously I have grandkids, but if they Google me or whatever the equivalent is in sort of 100 years' time, what are they going to see? And I actually want them to see there's something productive there. There's not just selfies and bullshit. There's actually something substantial. There's conversations with people like you. And that's really, I think that's important. And I think it's important to start thinking about legacy. You're lucky you've already got one, but a lot of people don't think in that way. They just think about the moment. And so they're really, their existence, you can still live in the moment, but you can also create a legacy, which is music is really good at being able to do that. So that's how I'm thinking. And, you've got this wonderful output. I mean, your name is going to be around for decades, hundreds of years potentially. I mean, this is the reality now with the technology we've got these days, is that you're going to be able to find out who did the drumming on an Alice Cooper album from 1987 in 200 years' time. And you can go back and there will be an AI equivalent of your drum style by that stage.
Well, I know it's actually amazing when you think about what's going to be in the future. But yeah, I agree with you. If I have time, I would love to write a book. And again, maybe it's just discipline and I need to just start doing it. But thank you for the advice as far as, don't worry about the chronology and and just get into it and just start writing. And that's I'm sure that's it's just like making an album. Just get in and start writing songs.
Yeah, the one criticism I've got about just about all rock and metal biographies is that they spend an inordinate amount of time on their childhood. And the only comment I've got about that is that how is that relevant to the rest of the story? And I just listened to Geezer Butler's audiobook, and he did the same thing. And it's relevant to a point, but it's they take almost – Keith Richards was the worst. His book spent almost a quarter of it talking about London. Okay, wow. Thank you for that, Keith, but I don't give a shit, to be honest with you. If I want to read about London, I'll go to Wikipedia or go there. You want to read – I mean, these are guys that led the most debaucherous existence of anybody almost in rock and metal history. And he's barely alive. I don't know how he's the one that survived and outliving Lemmy and David Bowie.
Well, what's weird is my wife and I saw the Rolling Stones play at Cardinal Stadium in Phoenix in, I think it was 2000 and I don't know, I'm going to say like 7 or 8 or something. And, great show. But we were convinced that Keith Richards was going to die at that show. Like we were, I told my wife, I go, just look at him. Like he's not going to make it through the show. Like, and then he'd disappear backstage. I don't know if he was getting oxygen or whatever, but he did some costume changes and stuff. And I was like, I didn't think he was going to survive back then. So I like this one article or this one meme I saw on Facebook, and it said, we need to start thinking about what kind of world we're leaving for Keith Richards.
It used to have Lemmy in it too. What we're going to leave for Lemmy and Keith Richards. Yeah. Look, Lemmy, I think what undid Lemmy was that he still drank Coca-Cola. So that caused him to have type 2 diabetes, I think. I could be wrong, but I think that's what happened there. But Keith only stopped doing speed a couple of years ago.
Well, I toured with, Lemmy, Motorhead opened for Alice Cooper on our European run for, I don't know, it was like maybe a month and a half or 2 months. And we got to know those guys. They were cool guys, but I tell you what, man, they were road dogs. I mean, they lived, they were rough and tumble, man. I call it the Lemmy shower. This is where I learned the Lemmy shower. You can actually take a shower in a sink. You can actually, do this and you can do that and wash your hair and stuff. And, there's a couple times I saw that, and it's like, those guys loved being on the road, man. It was like, whatever it took, they were going to make it happen. And, nothing, respect, you know what I mean? Like I have respect for those guys.
The stories I've heard from younger musicians, one Swedish, the guy from Jock or Yoke, I can't remember his surname now, but he's in Hardcore Superstar, told me a story, and Lemmy purposefully got him blind drunk on a tour bus. And he had to be carried off. So Lemmy could just put thinking back, as this guy, the young fella, and he could probably only drink half a bottle by himself before he was passed out. But Lemmy pushed him well beyond his limits, and I think he almost need to have his stomach pumped after that. So yeah, you're right about him being a road dog. There was nothing fake about it, was there?
No. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. You know who the real partiers are in the music business? Cheap Trick. Back in the day, Cheap Trick. Lanny Cordola was the guitar player in House of Lords on the first album. And he thought he goes, hey guys, I'm going to go hang out on the Cheap Trick bus for, a week or whatever, because they were partying back there. And in about 2 days, he came back with his tail between his legs, and he said, I can't keep up with them. They don't stop. They never stop. They don't sleep. They're just partying like the entire time. And so I just thought that was the funniest thing. People always thought in that era that it was like, Motley Crue or Guns N' Roses or whoever. Nah, the real partiers were Cheap Trick, man.
It's always the ones you least expect, isn't it? I had no inkling of that. That's the first time I've heard that about those guys. And there's not even a hint of it, is there, that they'd be like that?
No, not at all. I mean, we were all kind of like, wow. And the weird thing is they were so great every night. Like we were young and we had to get sleep and take care of ourselves and stuff. And, those guys were much older at the time and just killing it every night and, and partying like nonstop. And you're just going like, how are they doing this? I don't have any idea. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what in Geezer's biography, Bill Ward doesn't come off the best. Not that there's any lurid stories about him or what have you, but he was an alcoholic. as you might be
Sure.
aware, and it affected him terribly. That's why they couldn't have him back even when I don't even know whether he's sober, but when he wanted to come back in the last decade or so, because as you bloody well know, drums can be hard, yet alone when you're hungover.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, the two toughest positions are vocals and drums. And, if you're going to be a vocalist or you're going to be a drummer and you're going to do a lot of drugs or drink, it's probably not going to end well. The old axiom is true. If you have a problem, like let's say you're an alcoholic or you're a drug addict, and so that's a problem for you, there's only two ways out, clean up or die, those are your two choices. So, I guess I'll leave you with that thought, Andrew, but I will tell you, I'm very impressed with what you're doing in your interviews too. I did go and listen to some of those and
thank you.
Great job you're doing. Very thoughtful, very, you obviously put time into coming up with questions that are very good questions. And I really appreciated the interview.
Thanks very much, brother. Yeah, I mean, as I said, you were one of those guys who'd been on my radar for a long time. Guys like you and Joey Vera are my favorite musicians. Joey Vera.
Well, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Thank you.
No, because you know why? Because you're doing it, and you can do it in almost any circumstance or environment. I actually take that's where I actually take my inspiration from as a musician, because I play with a lot of people. And when I think about you and Joey, how many different bands you've been in and did the difficult circumstances you probably performed under and had to do sessions under and stuff like that, I think it's been done, so do it. That's my attitude.
Well, that's funny because that's what inspired me. In the 90s, I was having really a lot of trouble with my back, and I would do a session. I would get up and I could barely walk, and I had to go through physical therapy and find a new drum stool that actually moves and all these different things. But I figured out how to get around it. But one of the things that inspired me was a video of Buddy Rich. He was like, I think 63 or 64, and he was playing the Dominican Republic with Frank Sinatra. And he walks out there and, he looks like an old guy, and, he sits down and you think he's going to suck, you go like, yeah, how good is this going to be? And he just rips your face off for like 5 minutes, doing a solo, just shredding and just killing, just crushing everybody, and I'm just like, when I saw that, I was like, I'm sure there's parts of him that hurt. I'm sure not everything is perfect, whatever. But this guy is not letting anything stop him, and he's going out there. And that inspired me to like really kind of get back in and start fighting again. Because, that was something, that was something, seeing that video testimony of Buddy. And anyway, yeah, I hope I can inspire others. Hopefully that will inspire other people.
I think you do, mate. Yeah, and you do it unknowingly, of course. We've never met before, but different continents, this sort of thing. But that's what happens. That's what life is like. And yeah, look, I really appreciate the chat too, mate. It's been a wonderful conversation. I hope to see you guys down here sometime soon.
That would be great. We certainly would love to come down there, and hopefully there will be enough people to make that happen. That would be fantastic. I mean, you're in a beautiful country. It's like, are you by the beach at all?
Yep. Yeah, on Northern Gold Coast. So I'm in subtropics here. Yeah. So yeah, we live.
Must be great, right?
It's in my experience, it's basically the same as Hawaii, just a tiny bit colder. Because I've been to Hawaii a couple of times, and you sort of people go, "Oh, what's it like there?" And I said, "Shit, it just looks like here." To be honest with you, it doesn't even feel like I'm on holiday.
Well, that's funny that you mentioned that, because Hawaii is like my favorite place on the earth. Is Hawaii? I love Hawaii. Love that place.
Yeah,
so if it's like Hawaii, maybe I need to move to Australia then.
Come to Queensland, brother. There's a lot of Americans. I went to uni with a lot of people from the United States, and a lot come over and they don't leave. They don't leave because it's virtually, the 95% of it is the same, and there's 5% that's really different. But you'll find that same culture, Anglo-Celtic culture, it's all the same. When I say all the same in a positive way, same system of liberal democracy, and people are virtually leading the same life. 2 cars, dog in the backyard, that sort of thing, and love our freedom here. Some states don't, or some people don't, but But no, mate, if you can come out, I think you'd enjoy it. And I know I spoke to John about this last time because he's a scuba diver, so heaps of that going on here too. So. Yeah, I hope it happens, mate. I'd be one of the first people to buy a ticket, put it that way.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Andrew. You have it's morning there, right?
Yep. Yeah, just gone 11 now, yeah.
Well, you have a great rest of your day, and I'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Absolutely. Hope to see you down here, brother. No worries. Thanks very much again. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
There he is, ladies and gentlemen, the great Ken Mary. I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. The reason I do this podcast is because I get an opportunity to talk to guys like Joey Vera and Ken Mary, just then a great example. Now, if you enjoyed that conversation, go and check out the many more that are available at scarsandguitars.com. And if you like listening, maybe you like reading, I'm sure you do, go across to a marketplace of your choice after you've clicked the link in the banner on the website, and you can download a sample. And if you do complete the purchase of my book, Scars and Guitars, Conversations from the World of Heavy Metal, Hard Rock and Beyond, Volume 1, please do hit me up, because I want to thank you in person, and there's some more information to share with you about the book in the moment. Before we go to that, I'm going to bid you a fond farewell. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I host the show, Scars and Guitars. Until next time, it is a very goodbye for now.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew Mackay-Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal, and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Cold Chamber and why the band will never return.
You know, if you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words there. Sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Cold Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, you know, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silent Oz from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not going to be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, you know, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John Five answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
You know, my name is John Five, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot.
And we get the lowdown on Treyarch Zagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.